Hello AGS families, this is Mr. Ming here, Superintendent of the Au Gres-Sims School District, and I want to talk to you today about snow days. Why, you might ask? Well, the weather is starting to turn. We get that nip in the air and it's starting to get a little bit colder outside. So I figured I'd answer some of the questions that I get each year by going to students themselves and trying to answer what they wonder when it comes to snow days. 3.
Hey, Mr. Ming, what's a snow day?
That's a great question, Addie. Thank you. Actually, a snow day is not what it's called. It's called an inclement weather day, and those are days when we are just not safe enough to bring our buses on the roads and get our kids to school. Often that's because of snow and ice or drifting and that type of thing that happens here. But it's a really complex decision. It involves a lot of conversations, looking at the forecast, talking to our neighboring districts, figuring out what's going on down the road, really just trying to come up with the best answer possible to a pretty complex puzzle. We have a pretty unique district here. We've got the lake on our eastern edge, and that actually creates some crazy weather patterns that make that decision a little bit more difficult.
How do you know when to call a snow day?
Great question, Lola. Thanks for asking. Really, the only way to know what the roads look like is to actually get out there and drive them. So between 4 and 4:30 in the morning, I jump in my truck and I head out on the roads, trying to cover as many of the roads that our buses cover in our district. Sometimes I even enlist the Bobs, 2 bus drivers in our district who have been here for a couple decades combined experience. They help me to understand what our buses can do and can't do. There isn't really one formula. There's no secret success formula. You really just have to do the best you can. Around our district, we have a lot of deep ditches. We have dirt roads. We have gravel roads. We have major highways. It really just takes getting on the road to figure out how safe those roads are. 2, 3.
Why don't you cancel it the night before?
Thanks for asking, Charlie. In some rare cases, I can actually make the decision to cancel school the next day, the night before. But this usually involves a major weather storm, in conversation with the road commission about what they can get cleared and what they can't clear, driving the roads themselves at night again. But more often than not, it's a morning decision, and that's just what we have to go with.
Should my parents call the school to verify?
Good thought, Nolan. Thanks for asking. No, your parents really shouldn't call to verify because, quite frankly, no one's there to answer their call. When the decision's made, we try to make that notification before 6 o'clock in the morning, which means there really aren't very many people, if any, who are here on campus. Oftentimes, I'm actually making those notifications either from the road, pulled off to the side, or I'm at my house and jumping on my computer that way. We do our notifications in a number of ways, though. A phone call will go out. It's an automated call, usually with a recording of my voice. That goes out to all of the district, and it'll be staggered, so sometimes one parent might get the call before the other. We also post that information to our socials, and from there, it's on our website, and we call into the radio and the TV stations, and they tend to post that information for us, though we don't control when and how they post it. So, good question, but no, calling up to the school probably won't do much good because there's no one there to answer the call.
What about students who attend the Career Center?
Wonderful inquiry, Annalise. I appreciate it. One of the complexities of making this decision is that the first people we have on the road when it comes to getting up to school are teenage drivers. Our Career Center services our students who are juniors and seniors, and those kids commit to being at AGS by 6:30 in the morning to jump on a bus and travel through our neighboring districts on their way down to Bay City. So when I make that decision, I'm doing it fully in mind that we have teenage drivers getting on these icy and snowy, potentially dangerous roads. In that case, I make that decision by 6 to prevent them from already being on the road on their way up here. Now, when it comes to the Career Center, Bay City Public Schools tends to be what dictates whether the Career Center is going to be open or not. If Bay City Public is closed, the Career Center will close, and they have their own notification that will go out to our families with kids in the Career Center. Now, if the Career Center is open, but AGS is closed, our kids will be excused because we will not be running a bus providing transportation down to the Career Center that day.
Yeah. Mr. Ming, why don't we do virtual days?
Thanks, Max. Great question. We don't do virtual days for really a couple simple reasons. First and foremost, it's pretty rare that I call it off the night before. It's even more rare that I would call off school the following day during the school day preceding it, meaning that most of our kids don't have all the materials that they need, and that includes our teachers who might need to deliver a virtual lesson. So we don't tend to do virtual days for that reason, but also because the high-speed internet across our district is not widespread, and it would be a disadvantage for our families who don't have it. So as far as virtual days go, no, we don't currently do those because of those challenges that we face.
Hey, Mr. Ming, why don't we ever do a delayed start?
Hey, Mary, that's a good thought. So as I mentioned, Career Center is one of the big challenges, and they wouldn't have a place to go. Those kids, their first 3 hours of their day are scheduled elsewhere, so those students wouldn't have anywhere to go, which would kind of leave them in the lurch when it comes to a schedule. The other big thing about a delayed start is it's kind of a jump of faith, a leap of faith of, hey, this is what the weather's gonna look like in a couple hours. That puts our drivers in a dangerous situation potentially. It also is trying to make the assumption about what's gonna happen with our back roads. When it comes to the Road Commission, their first priorities are gonna be I-75, US 23, and M65. After that, they start covering the surface roads, but it is anyone's guess as to when they're gonna get to all of our back roads. So that's why we don't do a delayed start. It doesn't necessarily lead to better and safer road conditions for our drivers and for our students.
Hey, Mr. Mig, what about sports and activities?
That is a great question, Levi, and honestly, this is really the thing that comes up the most with coaches, with the athletic director, with parents, with athletes. I have to make the decision between 4 and 6 a.m. about whether or not it's safe enough to get our kids to and from school. But as we know in Michigan, the weather changes quite frequently, and you add to that the complexity of a winter schedule of shared gym time and all that, and trying to do reschedules, and it's not prudent to make that decision too early in the day. So we don't have a policy that dictates that we're automatically not doing our activities, and I reserve that decision for later in the day. I'm committed to making that decision by 1 o'clock, but I won't be making it before noon. So if I get any phone calls, emails, text messages, I'm not answering those because that decision needs to come a little bit later in the day. Whenever it's possible, yeah, I'd like to hold those activities because it's really difficult to reschedule. But one thing I won't be doing is I won't be allowing practices, student meetings, anything that would happen after school normally. I'm not going to allow that to happen before 3 o'clock. If it's not safe enough to have school during school hours, we're not going to be doing those activities that might put people on the road unnecessarily.
What happens if we have too many snow days?
Thanks for asking, Lincoln. This has come up a few times. It's something we have to deal with, but it really comes down to Michigan law. So when it comes to our school calendar, we have to have, by Michigan law, 180 school days at minimum and 1,098 hours of instruction. Now, what we actually do is we pack in a few extra hours of instruction because the state allows us some forgiveness for up to 6 days. Those 6 days usually follow with snow days, and that forgiveness is granted as long as you still have the minimum hours of instruction, that 1,098. Occasionally what happens is we go over our 6 days that are allotted, and we have to look at makeup situations. In some circumstances, we can apply for a waiver for up to 3 days more, but outside of those circumstances, we have to look at doing a makeup day or two in June. Again, what it comes down to is the safety of being able to transport our kids to and from school, and in June, that isn't an issue. So if we have to go a day or two longer in the school year, we do that. That's just one of the things we have to deal with living in Northern Michigan. Today, the decision about whether or not to call a snow day is a difficult one. It's one I take very serious. I know that when we cancel school, students are missing out on learning opportunities. They're missing out on the breakfast and lunch that we provide each day. And while they can get some of that at home on those days, it's a less structured environment, and it causes a lot of elation and happiness out of their teaching staff and our students, but it also causes some dread, some panic, some anxiety from our parents, from some of our students, from our coaches, from our athletes. It's part of living in Northern Michigan. I can't control the weather. If I could, it'd be pretty darn amazing, but I can't do that. So ultimately, I have to make the decision based on the information that I have. I have to hit a pretty tough, tight window in the morning, and it's not always going to be perfect. But I think we just need to laugh about it a little bit. We need to have a little fun with it and understand that it's part of school. It's something that our parents all experienced when they were younger, and it's part of being a kid. And we'll do the best we can with it, and hopefully make as many right decisions as we can, and understand and have a little bit of grace when that doesn't quite work out.